This is going to be an examination of an NFL passing concept that's honestly quite singular, allowing a running back to attack the opposing defense's fifth or sixth or maybe even seventh best coverage guy on what is called a wheel concept, typically into the boundary. I'm going to give you some markers or some elements that kind of encompass many of these examples. I think I've got 7 or 8 plays to show you. First one that we'll go over is actually from Saquon Barkley and the Eagles win over the Jags midseason 2024, and it's going to be quintessential if you ask me. Basically, end up with trips to the field and the running back set to the boundary, and what that will eventually do, depending on coverage, is isolate that running back on an inside linebacker or strong safety into the boundary. So here is our first iteration of it. You can see it's 2-by-2 set with Saquon Barkley lined up in the backfield to the boundary, so to the short side of the field. And so there's the two routes that are going to emanate once the ball is snapped. Now, the motion has created trips whereby this receiver is becoming the third receiver to the field, and the Eagles, have manipulated the defense to get a matchup they wanted. Saquon Barkley one-on-one into the boundary. A big part of this is what I would call a clear out concept by the number one receiver. It could be a vertical route like you see here, against off coverage that kind of veers to the inside. Doesn't initially do so, though, such that when you have a too high safety structure, such that the corner can just release it. And I'll give you an example of that a little bit later. So you can see there's a little bit of a vertical stem, and then bringing this route back in towards the middle of the field to hold the corner, occupy him, clear out that space for the running back to attack. In this case, easy throw for Jalen Hurts, obviously, over Saquon Barkley's outside shoulder. End zone angle of the same play. And so the motion is going to bring that strong safety or dime linebacker, if you will, into the boundary. Something to talk about here that I have to discuss, and it's the reason why I have a Marshall Faulk picture kind of flowing through between some of the plays, is old school 3-4 defensive philosophy would have the outside linebacker, a defensive end, whatever you want to call him, kind of chip any running back that released to his side. So when I had the path too wide there, what the idea was is if you chip the running back first series, first play, first time that he releases to your side, yes, you as a pass rusher have lost the ability to quickly get to the quarterback. So there's some negative elements there. But what you could do over the course of game is you could influence that running back to take a wider path than he wants to, and negatively impact his ability to get down the field with that wheel route. Now, Saquon Barkley's route here pulls him to the outside, basically would widen that defensive end. I'm not advocating or saying that you should do that on every iteration of it, but old school defensive philosophies kind of had answers for some of these things if you were willing to not allocate 5 guys to rush the quarterback, or in some cases even 4 on every single snap initially. The same dynamic exists here for the Ravens against the Bills in week 4 of 2024. You see the balls on the right hash, 2-by-2 set initially from 21 personnel. So watch what the safety does when Zay Flowers motions through. A big part of this, if you ask me, is offensive coordinators, offensive staff understanding what they're going to get from a particular coverage in a part of the field. And quite obviously, this ball is on the 19-yard line. The previous play that I showed you, Saquon Barkley, the ball was on the 20. So this is a concept that you see in certain areas of the field. But watch the safety, who I had spot shadowed, as Zay Flowers motions through. He gives a signal, a verbal signal, and a visual key to the boundary side corner. I think it's Rasul Douglas. So you as a offensive coordinator or offensive staff scouting would be able to, okay, look at this and then see how the coverage works out leading up to your game, and understand if we put this particular personnel group on the field and use a particular motion, we're going to elicit the same reaction. And then lo and behold, that's what the Ravens do. And that gets them a one-on-one Justice Hill against an inside linebacker. Again, notice the route from the number one receiver. Now, the cool thing about this is that initially you've got 2 receivers to the downside, and then once Zay Flowers motions through, again, Bateman's route is going to initially press vertical and then bring him into the middle of the field, or towards the right hash, I should say, and that is all to occupy that boundary side corner, Rasul Douglas, in order to clear out or hold that space, because Rasul Douglas and the safety knew that the safety was looking to the other side the entire time. So you're essentially talking about math or trickle-down effect, meaning safety is going to occupy here. The Ravens knew that based upon the location on the field, the personnel, the down and distance, and the motion. And then as a result, a vertical and then late inside release or inside route skinny post by number one is going to hold that corner and basically create a one-on-one to the boundary for Justice Hill. Complete mismatch. You can see that it's just as big a win, if not more, in fact, than Saquon Barkley against the Jags. End zone angle, same play. So it's a 2x2 set, free motion, and there's the two eligible receivers to the field. And so the one thing that I would say from a Bills perspective, deciding to cut three to the field with the boundary side safety, that signal that I showed you from 24, who you don't really see here, maybe you guys catch him a little bit on the bottom left portion of your screen, deciding to cut three or basically allocate all of his attention to the field, our right-hand side, is a little bit of a tactical mistake because really how much of a vertical threat are these two guys? That's up to your opinion and it may vary. My point is, I think you've got a situation where the Ravens have manipulated the Bills defense into a particular look. They get or elicit the look that they want post snap. And again, look at how closely the running back release is to the defensive end. And a lot of times the running back is going to chip the defensive end. Here, Justice Hill is trying to get vertical. And so there again, you have an opportunity, if you ask me, if you wanted to use that old school 3-4 outside linebacker mentality to possibly chip the running back and impede his ability to get on top of the inside linebacker so quickly. Both of the iterations that I've shown so far are trips to the field and then the running back set to the boundary. Each iteration is not going to be quintessential like I referred to the first one from the Eagles, but basically the way that it works is if you're an 11 personnel and put trips to the field, you've got the nickel DB to the field, and in almost all cases, a two high safety structure, or at least one safety allocated to a high alignment at the third level of the defense to the field. In this next example, the Chargers are going to be 12 personnel. What that will do is that will elicit the base defensive structure from the Denver Broncos. So here's the look that we're talking about. You can see that you've got two tight ends set to the field, and then two tight ends set to the boundary, and then two tight ends set to the boundary, and two wide receivers set to the field. My apologies. And there's the strong safety. So the fourth defensive back on the field, the second safety, is essentially mandatory to line up properly to the field if you're not going to apex or scooch out or move out this outside linebacker. It's twin wing A formation. So what that means is two tight ends and the running back are all set up on the same side, in this case to the boundary. And so what that does, again, has a trickle-down effect. Mathematically, it means that inside linebacker to the boundary is going to have to cover the running back to the boundary on that wheel concept. And it's a complete mismatch. The inside linebacker actually keeps his eyes into the quarterback a little bit. Some hesitation in terms of how the boundary corner, and the boundary inside linebacker are matching these routes. So we'll give you the end zone angle so you can see it. The point is the same dynamic has been created, an inside linebacker matching up with a running back to the boundary and some type of clear out route emanating from the boundary. In this case, it's a drag by the number one tight end, holding that outside corner, allowing that running back to threaten vertical immediately for what looks to me like an easy touchdown. Like I said, it's not a vertical clear out concept like the examples I showed you from the Eagles and the Ravens. It's a drag or shallow cross, if you will, from the outside tight end. There's the inside linebacker. Check out the release of the running back once again. The edge defender, number 0, I think it's Cooper. You got a little bit more width by the running back, but the point of mentioning or showing the Marshall Faulk picture, I think one of the most famous examples of this from modern or semi-modern football is the Patriots' first upset or first win over the Rams in the Super Bowl, the Kurt Warner, Marshall Faulk, Torrey Holt version of the Rams, that is, with Mike Martz as the head coach or as the offensive coordinator. So those types of defenses, those types of 3-4 structures would chip or at least have it in the playbook to do so. And look, the Patriots did it early and often to Marshall Faulk, such that it influenced his releases later in the game. Modern defenses, do they do that all the time? No. Do they do that often? It depends on the situation. What I'm offering or saying is there were built-in answers to some of these things years ago. It meant that you had to allocate that edge defender, pass rusher, briefly for the running back to make contact with him, impede his route, kind of set a physical tone. Now, there will be opinions that say you can't do that. Well, what the hell is the difference when on all of these iterations that I'm showing you, a 4 or a 5 man rush has gotten zero pressure on Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, or in this case, Justin Herbert in the first place? Most of the Ravens iterations of this concept are very cookie cutter trips to the field, running back to the boundary, same dynamic that I described with the Saquon Barkley touchdown and then the first touchdown to Justice Hill. What the Ravens do a lot of is what I call a snag route by the X receiver that really acts as a pick or a shield. It's a great concept that at this point, leading into the 2025 season, you can kind of see coming once the offense is lined up. But to this point here, I believe this is week 4, 2023, the Ravens hadn't really utilized the running back wheel much at all. This is a 3rd and 6. And what they've done here is they've isolated the inside linebacker, JOK, who hopefully at some point is able to come back healthy and make a contribution for the Browns or someone else. They've isolated him on the running back. It's Melvin Gordon. And so the snag concept is the yellow route by Nelson Aguilar at the bottom side of the screen. Basically a pick, rub, shield where he's forcing the inside linebacker to either go underneath, which you can't do against a wheel, or try to go work his way over the top, which if you do that, then could allow the running back to just shoot out into the flats because he's created that snag, that pick, that rub has created a ton of space for the running back to make that decision and read it, if you will. In this case, JOK went underneath, and the throw by Lamar Jackson, perfect, very soft. JOK really, at this point still doesn't know that the ball has been thrown. Converts a 3rd and 6. I think that's during the second quarter. To my knowledge, that was the first time we had really seen that concept in the Lamar Jackson era. Like I kind of alluded to earlier, it really ends up with your running back, or in some cases a receiver, the teams that put receivers into the backfield on the other team's 5th, 6th, 7th best cover guy. It may not be their 7th best cover guy on the field at that time, but you're certainly getting down the list in terms of the coverage structure. Who would be capable or able to cover someone in a game-winning situation extremely well and then make a play on the ball? And I think that's the important thing to note here that maybe I haven't talked about or covered yet, is you're putting a player, a safety, an inside linebacker in a position to make a play in a location they don't normally do so. Now, we have a guy like Peyton Wilson last year for the Steelers who made a ridiculous interception or strip fumble against Justice Hill on this, pretty much same concept, a ball that against the Steelers, Lamar Jackson kind of underthrew by like a yard versus some of these that are, really perfectly placed in the running back's hands out in front. So those guys, those inside linebackers or safeties are not usually covering with their back to the quarterback in a way that they've been trained to turn and make a play on the ball, like a corner, like a nickel DB, etc. This is the same concept, same exact setup. You're going to get motion by the number 2 receiver. In this case, it's Nelson Aguilar. And then a great job by Rashad Bateman here of running the pick, rub, shield, but doing so in a manner where he gets to the upfield shoulder. So Bateman, forces that inside linebacker to go underneath, but Bateman does so in a way that doesn't draw an offensive pass interference penalty. It's an easy touchdown by Lamar Jackson to Justice Hill in the first quarter, late first quarter. Now, why did this work so well? Well, the Ravens knew the coverage that was coming, number one. Number two, Justice Hill is once again not chipped by the outside linebacker edge defender at all, even though you can see there is not too much space between them. And again, what you want to do as a defense, if you're trying to stop, if you knew this play was coming, is chip the running back such that the next time he runs this route, he's going to widen his path even longer, and then that kind of clears up the read for the inside linebacker, meaning you can see that he's getting more width. So I need to get more width as opposed to coming downhill. You don't want to close or condense the space here too soon, like 45 is, and then allow the running back to get over the top for, like I said, a really easy touchdown. One of the reasons why teams or people, fans, analysts advocate for a dime linebacker at times is get your 4th or maybe 3rd safety in a situation that he can play against a running back into the boundary, really take away these routes, if you will. You can see the inside linebacker is staring at Nelson Aguilar for a moment, and then once the motion goes through, he knows, the inside linebacker knows he's got the running back, so what he does is he widens up. He's trying to create more leverage to the boundary such that he, the linebacker, can't be outflanked by Justice Hill. So he expands with the route and for a moment tries to get his eyes out to Rashad Bateman. Like I said, doing a great job and tremendous amount of separation for, a quite obviously easy touchdown to Justice Hill. Hill is not the only guy. Barkley, the rookie from the Chargers, whose name I forgot for a moment, the running back, he's not the only guy who can get these things accomplished. And in fact, a lot of teams like to put a wide receiver in at running back to the boundary at times to kind of threaten this wheel concept and remove certain coverages slash stunts, blitzes from the defense's umbrella or list of options, if you will. As far as that play goes, there's not really much you can say other than the Ravens had them set up. They had actually beat Miami on that concept earlier in the game, late season, I think week 17, 2023, real blowout. That was Vic Fangio's lone season in Miami before moving on to the Eagles. The Ravens, went at that concept early and to that point in 2023, the wheel concept had pretty much been unstoppable, other than balls that were maybe slightly underthrown or the hit the inside linebacker in coverage almost in his back. In the case of throw against the Seattle Seahawks in Week 9. Same game against the Dolphins. This is the aforementioned offensive pass interference by Isaiah Likely. You can see that the running back has motioned from the boundary back to set up next to the quarterback Lamar Jackson. And so the running back has helped sift out the coverage by the inside linebacker matching his movement. It's the same matchup we described earlier. Again, I'm going in reverse in terms of order of plays during that game. This safety to the boundary is going to cut or look to the field where you have a bunch of linemen. It's a 3rd and 6. It's kind of a go-to play at times for Todd Monken. Back then in 2023, we didn't see as many iterations of it in 2024. Still successful, however, obviously with the touchdown that Justice Hill had against the Bills. So there's the safety from the boundary, cutting, looking at the bunch to the field, and same dynamic as Bateman, except this time Likely doesn't sell it as much. He does work to the upfield. They called it offensive pass interference. I'm not super happy with the call still, but the example is set, if you ask me, of what they can do if you, as the defensive coordinator, defensive staff, are not going to allocate the boundary side safety to actually cover someone or help out to the boundary. It's a great play by Justice Hill to turn and get the football on a 3rd and 6 completion from Lamar. It's been a brilliant concept for Todd Monken and Lamar Jackson and the Ravens for the last 2 years. One that I would say is an extremely high percentage, 80% plus, in terms of developing the running back open down the field to the boundary, up the sideline in a way that Lamar Jackson can get him the football for 15, 18, 20-yard plus gains, if not a touchdown like you've seen in 2 of the examples so far. Now, the last play that I'll show is actually going back a little bit further in time. It's the 2022 playoffs, I think divisional round, Jags at the Chiefs. And it goes back to something I mentioned a little earlier in the video. Teams utilizing their wide receiver in the backfield. There's a lot to say. It's a successful example of it with Christian Kirk beating the defensive end for the Chiefs for an easy touchdown. But the play, the way that the Jags get this done, isn't necessarily the point of what I'm talking about. Again, you got Christian Kirk at running back. I think what happens when you put a quality wide receiver there with 3 other receivers to the field, in fact, one of them is a running back, is you elicit the coverage, first of all, and then second of all, in many cases, remove certain stunts, blitzes, coverages from the defense's umbrella. In this case, the Chiefs don't adjust and they leave George Karlaftis. Obviously, a horrible mismatch. It's a bad matchup anyway, right? To have an inside linebacker defending a wheel against a running back up the sideline. Here, you've got a starting caliber wide receiver. I know Kirk wasn't nearly as productive in the 2024 regular season, but matching him up against an outside linebacker because you're choosing to bring an inside linebacker on a blitz just doesn't seem like efficient or smart usage of your players to me. My overall point here is I think teams could use this more, both the wheel route into the boundary and a wide receiver in the backfield, specifically those hybrid guys. The Packers just drafted one this year, Savion Williams, a wide receiver slash running back who Most likely, we'll see more usage as a special teams guy, but he's a wide receiver with running back experience. So you actually could run a draw, a sweep with him, ask him to pass pro. In many cases, it's often a shorter wide receiver. Talking about historically that's hidden in the backfield, essentially making it more difficult for the defense to actually see him, especially if you're willing to get up to the line and snap it quickly. Now, in this case, it's quite obvious that the Chiefs see Christian Kirk back there because the inside linebacker Willie Gay. Again, this is after the 2022 season, so late January 2023. He's pointing, literally telling everyone, "Hey, George Karlaftis, you've got to cover Christian Kirk." Still, just as bad an idea as it was drawing it up. If you ask me, when you have a guy like Christian Kirk, the overall message I'm trying to send here is number one, I think defenses could do a little bit more on a widened release path by a running back, or in this case, wide receiver, into the boundary, even if it is third down. And number two, certain defenses should probably look at removing particular blitzes slash stunts from their umbrella or their choices if there's a wide receiver lined up into the boundary, lined up in the backfield into the boundary. Like I said, it's a tough cover for an inside linebacker on a running back, let alone a defensive end on a wheel, a semi-vertical by a wide receiver. Borderline unfair at that point. I do welcome thoughts or questions about the collision rules for outside linebackers in an old school 3-4 structure or old school 50, what it was called years ago. Particularly like the Patriots did against Marshall Faulk and Kurt Warner and the Rams in that Super Bowl upset years ago. Tom Brady and Bill Belichick's first win with the Patriots. In any case, if you enjoyed the video, this concept exploration of a running back wheel and some of the markers that you could look for as a fan pre-snap, if you enjoyed it, please let me know in the comment section, number one. And then number two, if you think other NFL fans would like to see some of this film with some explanation or an in-depth look at how teams make it happen and why certain routes should be considered complimentary, then please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media to help this video get more reach.